So let me introduce my panelist here. So my panelist here is Mr. Mallikarjun, and my name is Akhil Damodaran. Mallikarjun is the co-founder of Time Chain Labs, and he is working on the PSV blockchain, and he has almost 10 to 12 years of experience in the area. And so what we are discussing today is to make sure exactly how blockchain is going to impact the public sector and the government project as well. And because it's a very complex area, as well as it's an area where a large amount of business is going to be impacted if a blockchain or a technology like this is going to come positively. So I think, Monica, let me not to get more formal, and I would better say that let's start on exactly how this blockchain uh, can impact a government project. So before I get into the government projects which is happening in India, I want to really know exactly where BSC blockchain comes in terms of the government projects and the experience they have.
Sure. Hello, viewers. Thank you, Akhilji, for having me. A small collection. I definitely don't have 12 years of experience. I graduated in 2014. So it was an integrated master's, and then I went on to work for my PhD. So, but it's only last year that I changed my tracks and got into blockchain. And the reason I did that is because it seemed apparent that what computers were in early 80s and early 90s with MS DOS and so change the world. So coming to your question specifically, in general, I believe blockchain brings only one thing to the table, which is immutable timestamping. Right now, this can have applications from payments to having a traceable, trustworthy system and so on. And specifically, when it comes to the government sector, I think there is, in my opinion, there is no part of the government that will remain untouched by blockchain. Uh, Purely because blockchain brings trust, traceability, and transparency, and this is what all of us citizens want from the government. So the world is going to move in that direction. Coming to the BSV blockchain, so the BSV blockchain is a proof of work blockchain, which uh, claims to be true to the original Bitcoin white paper from Satoshi Nakamoto in 2008. And it's a single, so the vision of the BSV blockchain is that of a single shared global public ledger. So just as back in the day in 50s and 60s, there was no single internet, there were multiple internets. But we see how it converged to a single protocol, which is the TCP/IP, and a single global internet. Even now you have multiple intranets, but we have only one internet in the world. So this is what the BSV side believes in, that eventually the world will have to move to a single shared public ledger, which naturally needs to scale and offer an extremely low transaction fee. So for governments, what BSV offers is their own enclosed subledger, so to speak, on the global public ledger. A government, for example, the government of Tuvalu, a small island nation, is getting its own subledger on the global public BSV ledger. And of course, you can build the BSV blockchain and so on. Some deeper questions.
Internet is slightly slow sometimes. Okay. Anyways, but let me move forward on this. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me put it on a simple basis how Indian projects or the government projects really works. Okay. So what generally happens is, I mean, there's a difference between a private project and a public project.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this difference is not so easy to understand. I mean, the difference is not that one is governed by the government and the other is a private party. No, it's not. In a government project or a public sector project, there are complexities. The reason is, let me start from the first part of it. What is the objective?
Hmm.
I mean, from a public sector project, the objective and the private sector project, the objective is entirely different. For a private sector
Absolutely.
project, is obviously they want to build the infrastructure
Profit.
or whatever it is. but it's the profit. At the end of
Correct.
the day, they have to return
Correct.
on the profit.
Correct.
But when you talk about public sector projects, you are actually getting into social welfare mechanism.
Most
I mean, the
definitely.
major objective is to make sure how we can how we can get social welfare to the public. Okay,
Correct.
easy said than done. The more important point is that social projects or the public sector projects are not generally executed by the government. It is executed by the private party. And
Correct.
the objective, now I hope you understand the complexity starts from here because the objective of a private party is a return and the objective of the government is social welfare.
Correct.
And maintaining that is what the journey of public sector project means that. I mean
Yeah.
that for a nutshell, if I give the soul of the complexity is that one wants that how we can make sure the social welfare is for the customer and the other actually wants to have profit. I'm not saying who's hero and villain. Nobody's hero and villain. It's the need of
Absolutely.
both the entities, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Second point of it is when the project valuation increases. I mean, in the sense when you're talking about a 1 crore project or a 90 lakhs project, 80 lakhs project, it's fine. I mean, generally this is not the value. But when you're talking about 1,000 crore project, 10,000 crores project, sometimes it is 12,000 crores project. The timeline of that project also increases to 7 years to sometimes it is even 20 years. See the case of airports. Constructing, operating that airport, the total duration is around almost 8 to 10 years.
Right.
By the time you
Right.
start actually getting the revenue you want, building
That's
it and
right.
completing it. So this the complexity increases because the risk on a private party is high. Okay, and at the same time you have to make sure that the government's objectives are done. At the same time, you want to make sure that how quickly I can get the return.
Correct.
Okay, and why I want to really get into the fact that how blockchain can change, why I feel why blockchain can change the government project mechanism is that the complexity in a government project is that first of all there is a complete information asymmetry. I mean
Mm-hmm.
that's the word I would say, information asymmetry. The reason for information asymmetry is because uh, uh, the incentive of transparency is less in a public sector journey. Okay, the reason is because the cost is so high, the risk is so high, and the regulator, obviously regulator wants a balance. I'm not denying that part. Regulator wants a balance, but at the same time, the private enterprise always wants to make sure that how can I get more, and that's not wrong because that's how the private enterprise works. So the whole point where the whole government project works out is on policy and regulation. Now I'm coming to the blockchain part. I'm not going anywhere else. I'm actually coming to blockchain part
Yeah.
now. So when it comes to policy and regulation, it needs a lot of data.
Right.
Okay, it needs real-time information.
Mhm.
Okay, and it also wants that whatever policy or regulation is put forward in a particular project, it is executed exactly the way it has been said. Monitoring.
Mhm.
Now, what happens on ground is not always bad, but what happens on ground is, there are a lot of differences happens between the private and the government as the time changes
Correct.
because
Correct.
tender time is a different time, operation time is a different time, execution is an entirely different time.
And in
And
between, there are multiple new governments in charge.
absolutely, not only government, sometimes what happens is, the
Bureaucrats.
climate
Yeah.
changes. I
Correct.
mean,
Correct.
the government might have set a particular tender forecasting that with all the numeric, all the data presently having,
Yeah.
forecasted that
Yeah.
X, Y, Z will happen in the next coming year. So tender is put up and private parties are trying to do it. And next
Yeah.
year, COVID happens. I mean, yeah, so the external factors are so much in a public project that,
Yeah.
and if you know the values of project public the government projects are much higher. I mean, if you look at public-private partnership in India, that
Mhm.
itself is currently itself it is more than 300 to 400 billion dollars.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, it's a
Yeah.
huge big market, huge big
Mhm.
market, and the reason why it is a huge because the public project are the soul of a country's development because ultimately they are providing the core infrastructure you want.
Yeah.
If you look at the private project, I'm not saying that they're bad projects, but generally what happens,
Mhm.
private is tend to move towards where the market is.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's a difference between what I guess, the difference between maybe Bangalore and Nagpur, or Bangalore or Lucknow maybe. Okay. I mean, you understand the point. Where the business moves, the development moves. That's how the private sector works to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is the public sector project which actually balances that. They
Mhm.
say, okay, fine. Let the Bangalore develop, let the Gurgaon develop. That's a different issue altogether. Let it happen on its own. But we have to make sure that the country has the core infrastructure which is required. Now the problem is the competency.
Mhm.
Competency is where the private party comes in. Now, why I'm saying this to you, Arjun, Mallikarjun, but the reason is, see, where is the blockchain comes in picture in this particular whole landscape? It comes in two ways. The first is to create a complete real-time monitoring process of the transactions which are happening. Because in a public sector project, there are many entities which are involved. Many entities. I assure you that people don't realize it. It is much complex than a private sector transaction. It is much complex than that. There are contractors, subcontractors. There are SPVs, special purpose vehicle. There are main operator or the builders who are actually in that. And let's say the railway or the airport, it's huge complex infrastructure. Maintaining that complete monitoring into one single platform is that will be a
That's
eureka moment for a blockchain company.
true. True.
I mean
True.
that's
Right.
exactly the point. First thing. Second important point is because the whole period of development is 10, 15, 20, sometimes even 30 years
Mhm.
period, there are a lot of things which may change.
Yeah.
Smart contracts is where the government projects can really get benefit of.
Mhm.
The reason is because, as I said you, because smart contracts, there's a binding between private and the government party. Okay, and that binding can be monitored, traceable, and everybody has to be in consensus to make sure that can be changed tomorrow. I mean,
I agree.
that's a very crucial part. And last but not the least, none of the public sector project, if you look at, there's no mechanism by which public can be part of it.
Right.
I mean, whether to see whether this is going to work or not. I mean,
Mhm.
whether it is working rightly on the ground the way they want to.
Mhm.
I mean, that's where I feel that even the blockchain can really work out in the sense as we're making public as one of the entity of the part of the consensus, and they should have a say in the contract.
Most
I mean,
definitely.
that's the whole concept. I'm saying it's not my idea. It is exactly the idea happening already. But problem is there's no technology which addresses it correctly.
Correct. Correct.
And even if I say to you, Mallikarjun, let's say blockchain is the answer, task is how to implement it. I mean, it's a large scale project. Matlab, even if the company agrees to do it, matlab, I don't know how big and complex and how large this project will be.
Most definitely.
So
I
that's
mean,
what
more
my
important,
story.
more important than the guys who build those smart contracts are people who actually tell them how to do it. So this is where your
True.
expertise comes in, really.
Yeah.
uh,
No, seriously. I mean, it's a joint venture of a, a blockchain guy, but also a person who understands the public project very well.
correct, correct. Yeah.
Let's put it this way. There are many companies who make smart contracts. I'm not denying that fact. They are doing so well. But understanding a legal contract converting is not. It's not just a. It's a handshake. I mean, you have to respect each other's area and learn from each other. I mean, we learn what technicality is, and you learn what the legality is. I mean, that's how it is, and it is a long-term project. It's. I mean, whoever is going to get a solution, it's a huge long-term project. I mean, blockchain. But I really feel I'm really inside my heart to feel the real use of blockchain in the next 10 years is exactly in the public sector because transparency, traceability
Absolutely.
is a government objective. It is
Exactly.
it is
Exactly.
not exactly a
Not
private
a
entity
private
objective.
object.
It's
Correct.
a
Correct.
government objective.
And my
And yeah,
experience also agrees with this a lot. Recently, I met somebody who's been in the blockchain services industry for the past 3 years. And they said every private sector company they approached, they gave very nice presentations, everything, people smiled at each other and agreed blockchain is going to bring a transformation, but they did not get a single contract. Whereas they already have one or two contracts, major contracts with state governments already. So this kind of enunciates your point even better, that public sector is the place to be if you want to demonstrate blockchain use cases.
Absolutely, absolutely. And see, ultimately, any technology, I don't want to comment on what happens uh, to the outcome of the technology, but every technology is made to revolutionize the consumer at the end of the day. Matlab, how to make
Right.
the life of the public for better,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
And somehow internet started in a good way. I'm not denying that fact, but shifted with how the wind flows back. So I mean,
that's the
a lot
way
of
it
social,
is. Yeah,
yeah, that's the way. But
yeah,
blockchain is a kind of technology which is, honestly speaking, to you, it doesn't have the glamour of the of internet. The
yeah,
good
yeah,
part is that it cannot just move away with the wind and the venture capital fund which is going on. It doesn't have the glamour.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but it had the hardcore root
Mm,
where actually the whole I mean, let's go to the history. Matlab, the whole
yeah.
human evolution started with transparency and decentralization. And I mean, it is not that principle is what makes blockchain so important. I
Most
mean, so
definitely.
I really feel that the time has come that the thing should be the thought should be more move towards how public sector and the project and the government can work with the blockchain companies and how blockchain solutions can be created on this aspect.
I fully
So
agree with
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I want to know one more thing, Malika. Foreign, I think, I mean, blockchain is still, I mean, explored for public sector, right?
Yes, it is a work in progress, and it hasn't progressed as people would have liked it to progress. Because again, like you said, working with governments is not easy. Things take time. Um, I mean, हमें लगता है, we believe that our government is slow. But let me tell you, I stayed in Berlin for 6-ish years. And even before I landed there, like the plan for a new Berlin airport was mooted early 2000s. And it got completed just before I uh, came back. So just building a single airport took them almost 18 years or 17 years, right? And I think we should pat ourselves on the back that the Terminal 3 in Delhi was built in 2 years flat or something like that. So things are never hunky dory when governments are involved, uh, because people change, plans change, like you said. Uh, Documents are found in the dumpster, as it happened in the case of the Berlin airport, which ideally would not happen with blockchain, right?
Exactly,
So,
exactly, exactly.
yeah, this is an interesting thing. But to your question specifically, I would say it's still in a very, very nascent stage. And this is where I believe India can uh, take the driver's seat. We can drive the curve instead of following it. So we shouldn't be waiting for other people to, prove their worth in big projects, but we should take the initiative to get it done. Of late, there has been a lot of movement. Like, for example, the other day I was reading about this national logistics mission or something like that, Gati Shakti project, right? That's really going to revolutionize things. And imagine now if that something like that is powered by blockchain. So
Hmm.
sky's the limit, really.
Seriously, seriously. Now, I also want to ask you because technically, I think you can answer me better. If you're implementing blockchain, obviously traceability,
Yeah,
transparency, that's a feature which will come in.
yeah,
Consensus is a
yes.
feature. What about infrastructure? I mean, what do you feel that's a cost much higher than what a normal IT infrastructure requires, or it will be same?
The answer to this question is almost everywhere. It's like it is a game of possibilities. What direction you take, right? So if people want to do a private permission ledger, naturally it's going to be slightly more expensive. Uh, but if you want to capitalize on the economics of scale and go with a public blockchain, so the cost gets shared and then the transaction fee comes down. So it's really what direction the government decides to take. And in this, I firmly believe, instead of just putting my side of the debate across, I believe that we should try everything. And then over the next 5 or 10 years, we'll realize that this is what works best. And then everybody automatically will copy that. So the infrastructure, what you said, it's extremely important that if we take the private blockchain route, we have our own uh, ecosystem of miners, right? For private blockchains, anyway, you'll have nodes, which will be government departments. So in the end, it is my opinion that public blockchain, such as the BSV, would work out to be cheaper. People will, of course, point out to the fact that if it is a proof of stake permissioned ledger, it would work out to be cheaper, but then it also compromises on security. That is my personal view. And if it compromises on security, why even do it? I mean, the centralized systems that we have right now are good enough. So yeah, that's my view.
Okay, good point. Good point, Mallikarjun. But also, I want to know one more thing before we can have a concluding remark on this
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah,
See, in a public sector project, and especially when we if you look at from the blockchain point of view, you said about the infrastructure, what kind of infrastructure you're using, and other things. But
mm,
there is also an importance of interoperability, in the sense
correct,
that
correct.
uh, in a let's take the case of PPP project. Okay, like you just mentioned GMR Delhi Airport.
Yeah,
GMR Delhi Airport. GMR Delhi Airport was Indira Gandhi Airport before. It was
correct.
then by tender it was given to GMR Airport, and after GMR Airport came in, Terminal 3 was a start point.
Mhm,
A subcontract was given to L&T, I guess, if I'm not wrong,
mhm,
because I'm
mhm,
talking in a public TV. So I mean, but it was
mhm.
given to L&T, if I'm not wrong, and there are other parties as well. I mean, who are giving the accessories to make sure that the ground handling companies. There are shopping companies who are creating that the shops and everything, and there is a infrastructure company. I think it is L&T who constructed that, who helped in the construction of the whole premises.
Right.
And then you have a runway. So you have runway is a complete a different ball game altogether, different entity.
Yeah.
Then you have aircraft companies who have a deal for the parking slots and other things. And there are. Why I'm trying to tell you all these things is not to get you the complexity of it,
Mhm,
but to make you understand. When I say implementing blockchain on a PPP project,
mhm.
let's take the airport. There are multiple stakeholders, and all those stakeholders have no connection with each other when it comes
Correct.
to their work. I mean, if let's see the case of airport itself, you have a
Yeah.
runway company. Okay, this is a government one. Okay, and you have a ATS, which is signal and other part of it. You have
Correct.
AOCC, which is the monitoring part of it. You have ground handling companies who are giving the ground staff everything and all those things. Then you have shopping companies who are giving you non-aeronautical revenue and everything, which is part of it.
Mhm,
And apart from that, you have the flights, the airlines. Now you're giving them counters. You
mhm.
have seen their counters. That's a booking. That's a different arrangement altogether.
Correct.
And then there is a company which is providing you aircrafts. Okay,
Mhm, mhm.
this is the minimum level of stakeholder which I can list. If there is a
Absolutely.
guy who's coming from airport, he can give you much higher than that, 10 times more than what I given you. Now, when we started this conversation, we are saying that implementing blockchain to create a central portal where all the transaction can be monitored. Now imagine the situation. That's exactly as I said. Even if the whole, I think the challenge is nobody has come out with a solution how to plan it. I mean, let's say even if somebody gets a tender for blockchain company to do that,
Mhm.
how can you do it? I mean, still we don't know. I mean,
I'll tell
not
you
only
how
the
I would do
implementation.
it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
The way I would do it is study the current system, the way they did it in Delhi, because they did not use blockchain, right? And then try to classify certain verticals. For example, payments would be one vertical. Okay. Then permissions for planning and design would be one vertical. Then, for example, inviting tenders would be another for whatever shops in the duty free area and so on. So likewise, if we identify a few verticals and then build modules upon those to aid the traditional web so-called web 2 process. That would be the way to go, in my opinion, right now. But in future, of course, we can think of overhauling the entire system and coming up with something completely new. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
that's
I
that's
mean,
something.
from your discussion itself, I can understand that. I mean, there's a clue already there how to do it,
Yeah, yeah,
but there's a long journey to move forward to.
most definitely,
Okay.
most definitely.
Yeah, yeah,
But
most definitely.
I think tokenization brings great value to the table. So you
Okay,
can.
can you explain us exactly how tokenization can help us in the ecosystem?
So first and foremost, there is fractional ownership of the real estate itself, right? The entire project. So you can issue tokens, which would depict or represent equity that various stakeholders possess. In addition, you can issue tokens that give people voting rights on various issues. So, for example, if there is a duty-free area and there are various international brands that have paid money to book a space for themselves and they get tokens, then depending on how much they've invested and what kind of the space be, or where should the lighting be, and what should be the emergency pathways and so on, so according to their interests. So this is one advantage. The other advantage of tokenization is permissions. So you can remember in the old times we had a system where file would go from one government office to another, from one clerk to their boss and so on. So you can replicate the exact same system with blockchain. Like a file would have just one copy, nobody can copy it. If somebody copies it, the system raises an alarm, and then people sign on it one by one.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point altogether. So I mean, what? Okay, what the nutshell I can take out from this? First and foremost thing is, I think both of us agree, government projects are
Yeah,
complex. Okay,
of
it's
course,
a
no
long
doubt.
journey to go, and
Yeah,
blockchain is the nascent stage.
correct, correct.
Second very important point is, I think both of us agree that blockchain can bring traceability and transparency in
Correct.
the ecosystem. That's a very important point. And
Yeah,
also, I think because of the blockchain's innate ability, I think it will also facilitate to reduce the time of the transactions happening
most
around.
definitely,
That's
most definitely.
most definitely, most definitely. But I also realized that we need to make sure that there had to be different sub modules of planning required to have a complex work to be done. I mean,
Yeah,
for a small public sector project, it may not be an issue, but for a big public project, it's not one solution for all. I mean, you have
correct.
to have a sub categories to move forward to. And last but not the least, the tokenization,
Hmm.
which can
Absolutely.
give power rights to the public as well. I mean, you
Yeah,
also gave, I think, give me the answer of public-private people partnership, in which the people have the right and the say or have a
yeah,
small ownership in the project
exactly,
through tokenization.
exactly.
Okay, fine. So at least the layout is done. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So thank you
Yeah,
so much, Malik. I think this is a good conclusion altogether, and I think viewers can also at least got some idea exactly how the public sector project works and how the blockchain can work out. I think the series has to continue, and we
most
both have
definitely.
to do more studies. Yeah. Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
so much,
I
Malik,
mean, we are
and
we are also learning, and hopefully, the future podcast episodes would be packed with more curated and well researched information. So I'm really new
absolutely,
to this,
absolutely,
but yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much, Malik. Thank you so
thanks a
much for
lot.
your time.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks.